Good morning. This is Larry Welty with St. Louis County Department of Transportation. We are going to talk to you about a plan that we have been working on the past couple of years. It's the St. Louis County Action Plan for Walking and Biking. So our agenda this morning is to go over the plan background, talk about existing conditions, tell you what we've heard from the public, um, review the plan recommendations, talk about some specific corridors that we've studied, and then what it'll take to implement the plan and funding the plan, and then next steps. The action plan for walking and biking is the county's long-range master plan to improve conditions for walking and biking throughout St. Louis County. The action plan will also serve as the update to St. Louis County's portion of the regional bike plan that Great Rivers Greenway has done in the past. The action plan provides the blueprint for St. Louis County to develop a safe, connected, and equitable transportation system that supports people of all ages and abilities in accessing life's many opportunities. This vision represents the desired outcome for the action plan, a vision in which walking and bicycling are key components of a multimodal transportation system and offers county residents safe, comfortable, and convenient travel choices to access employment, schools, parks, transit, shopping, and other everyday destinations. At the heart of the plan are 7 core values: safety, connectivity, equity, collaboration, health, inclusivity, and reliability. The plan's recommendations for new sidewalks and bikeways, as well as supporting policies and programs, embody these values and represent concrete actions for the county and its community partners to bring this vision to life. Many residents have asked us throughout the planning process why we even plan for walking and biking at all. Can't people just walk and bike on the trails? Trails are important to be sure, but walking and biking aren't just recreational activities. Many county residents travel to work, school, shops, and other destinations on foot or by bike, and rely on the same roads we all drive on to reach their destinations. It is important that, regardless of whether you travel by car, bus, bike, or foot, you have safe travel ways to get you from A to B. Safety for people walking and biking is one of the biggest imperatives for the action plan. Although people walking and biking are involved in just a small portion of crashes that occur in St. Louis County, they are disproportionately injured or killed as a result. Pedestrians, for example, are involved in less than 1% of crashes in the county, but represent almost 25% of people killed. In fact, 9 out of 10 crashes involving a pedestrian result in an injury, and more than 4 out of every 5 crashes involving a bicyclist results in an injury too. People walking and bicycling need safe places on our roads in order for these modes of transportation to be viable. St. Louis County is a diverse community, and the transportation needs and abilities of our county residents vary widely. By looking at demographic data such as income, race, age, access to a motor vehicle, we can better understand transportation needs across the county. This map, for example, uses these demographic factors to identify areas where residents may have a greater need for walking and bicycling facilities to increase access to transit, schools, parks, employment, and shopping. Building an equitable transportation system acknowledges these differences and focuses resources to better support underrepresented, underserved populations in our community. The action plan is not the first planning study to address walking and bicycling. in active transportation in St. Louis County, and it won't be the last. The plan builds on previous studies like Imagining Tomorrow, the county strategic plan, the Community Health Improvement Plan, and Great Rivers Greenways Gateway Bike Plan. Each of these studies has helped to build strategic relationships, increase community dialogue about active transportation, and advance walking and bicycling through policy and infrastructure change. The action plan will carry forward many of the strategies and recommendations from these earlier studies. Another important reason for planning or walking and bicycling is to provide concrete strategies for implementing the county's Complete Streets Ordinance. The ordinance was adopted by the County Council in 2014 to ensure that St. Louis County road system is planned, designed, constructed, and maintained to support people of all ages and abilities, regardless of their mode of transportation. While the ordinance formalized a lot of activities already being conducted by the Department of Transportation, it also created additional guidance for project planning and design and increased collaboration among county departments and with external stakeholders. The action plan will advance complete streets in St. Louis County by recommending projects, procedures, and protocol to better integrate walking and bicycling into transportation investments and infrastructure. I will now let Kevin Neal tell you about the development and contents of the plan.
Well, thanks, Larry. My name is Kevin Neal. I'm a planning associate with Alta Planning and Design and have served as the project manager for the consultant team on the action plan. And I'm going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of our planning process, look at some of the outcomes. And I'd like to get started just by giving a quick overview of some of our existing conditions work. And this really provides a documentation of some of the analyses we've conducted and helps to paint a picture of current conditions for walking and biking and for future needs and investments in active transportation. And these analyses we've conducted up front really help to inform our discussions with stakeholders and served as the foundation for our recommendations to enhance network connectivity, safety, and comfort for people walking and biking. One of the first tasks we conducted were inventories of pedestrian and bicycle facilities. For pedestrian facilities, we focus primarily on the county arterial road system, looking at the 500 miles of roadways that really provide that level of regional connectivity, not just in unincorporated areas, but also in some incorporated municipalities as well. The presence of sidewalks along those corridors varies. Roughly 40% of those roads have sidewalks on both sides, while conversely, about 43% have sidewalks on neither side. So a lot of that varies just based on land use and development patterns over time and the importance of sidewalks during those different development periods. When we look at what conditions are like for walking along those corridors, we're able to use our pedestrian level of service model to gain a sense of that level of comfort for people walking. We take into account things like speed limits, number of travel lanes, presence of sidewalks or buffer adjacent to the sidewalk to score each roadway segment. The LOS 5 being the worst level of service, usually as a result of increased travel speeds, greater number of travel lanes, and you'll see that a lot on our busier arterial roads. When we look at that on the map, you can see those red lines scattered throughout the county, representing some of the most uncomfortable conditions for walking. In a lot of those instances, you might see a 4 or 5 lane arterial with no sidewalk, 40-mile-an-hour posted speed limit. And while these areas aren't fully connected, they do give us an opportunity to target some of our recommendations to address this pedestrian level of service. Similarly, for bicycle facilities on the street network, we've documented almost 160 miles of bikeways that exist throughout St. Louis County. That's on county, state, and local roads. When we look specifically at the on-street bikeways on county roads, that comprises about 25% of all those bikeways. In addition to that 160 miles of on-street bikeways, St. Louis County is fortunate to have a fairly well-connected system of trails and greenways with over 100 miles in St. Louis County alone. And that's a major benefit, not just for recreational opportunities for county residents, but in many cases can really help serve a purpose for regional transportation as well. Looking at those bicycle facilities in terms of level of traffic stress, we conducted an analysis of all existing and planned corridors on the Gateway Bike Plan network in St. Louis County, which consists of about 600 miles of roadway. Similar to the pedestrian level of service, we're looking at travel speeds, number of travel lanes, and even ADT to help get a sense of what the experience is like bicycling along these corridors. The greater the speed limits, the more travel lanes, the higher the traffic, the less comfortable it is to bike on those corridors. When we look at that on the map, you can see a lot of red and orange lines. It gives you a sense that regional cycling activity is limited only to those more confident cyclists, particularly your recreational cyclists, road cyclists, maybe your commuter cyclists as well, and that some longer distance trips for bicycling, beyond the neighborhood or to your local, downtown or shopping center might be difficult. Some of the other factors we took into account during our existing conditions analysis include documentation of bicycle and pedestrian crashes, looking at those high crash corridors and intersections to understand where investments in active transportation infrastructure can help create a safer environment for people walking and biking. From a needs assessment perspective, we also took a look at land use, transit data, and other demographic data to understand where there might be concentrations of activity or certain populations for whom bicycling and walking infrastructure can help create transportation choice and improve access to local destinations. So we see that here with our land use and transit-based demand, where we documented things like residential density, employment density, the presence of parks, schools, transit stops, and retail to create a composite picture of demand for walking and biking. And this really helps inform our development of network recommendations. A similar analysis looking at health data painted a unique picture of health disparities across St. Louis County and gives us a sense of where bicycling and walking facilities can help address some of these health issues and support positive health outcomes. So some of the health indicators we took into account for this analysis include heart disease, diabetes, asthma, and other health indicators related to physical activity. In our equity analysis, we focused on some demographic characteristics that Larry discussed earlier, and it highlights the different needs for active transportation across St. Louis County. And we see in certain areas, particularly in North St. Louis County, there's a greater need for active transportation, not just as or active transportation facilities like sidewalks, bikes, and trails, not just for recreational needs, but also for transportation needs. And again, we use this data to help us not only gain an understanding of what the current needs are for walking and biking, but how that can inform our network recommendations and subsequent prioritization of those recommendations have the greatest impact. Jumping into our community engagement efforts for this project, it was fairly comprehensive. Over the course of more than 16 months, we were out in the community in one form or fashion, increasing awareness about this plan, learning from residents what their needs and aspirations for walking and biking were, and helping to develop a plan that really reflects community values. In the top of this engagement plan chart, you'll see we had advisory committees to help guide the process. We were holding stakeholder interviews, public meetings, pop-up events for a couple rounds of engagement. Of course, during this planning process, we had to pivot from a lot of in-person engagement to online engagement in light of COVID restrictions on social distancing and public gatherings. And while it may have changed our approach, it's kind of giving us an opportunity at the same time to reach people in different ways. And we found that as we moved to that online platform, we were able to reach a very wide audience. And I think it actually helped us drive participation to our live Zoom meeting that we held to present our recommendations, and also to our 2-week-long virtual open house, which mimicked in many respects a typical open house as people walk through that meeting to gain an understanding of the project, look at proposed recommendations, and share their input through a virtual map and help us refine our recommendations as we've moved towards plan development. A few numbers here. You'll see, our participation process has really garnered a lot of input over a period of 12 months to almost 16 months. In particular, our online engagement tools have really proved to be successful. And that's something that has helped give us a better understanding of not just needs for St. Louis County residents in general, but being able to take that data and understand different needs in different parts of the county. It's been very useful, and it's helped us really shape our plan recommendations, which I'll get to right now. So the building blocks of our active transportation system for St. Louis County consist of pedestrian facilities like sidewalks, safer crosswalks, shared use facilities like trails and side paths that support both walking and biking, and then a few different types of on-street bikeways that run across this spectrum from mixed traffic bikeways to visually separated bikeways, and then physically separated bikeways, which are starting to be more common in the St. Louis region. So one important consideration for the planning team when developing these recommendations was the need to support a diverse range of ages, abilities, and skill levels. There are many county residents who are interested in walking and biking more often, but are concerned about traffic and roadway conditions. So to create an inclusive and welcoming network, we focused on low-stress facilities that, in a large part, separate people walking and biking from faster-moving motor vehicle traffic, particularly on busy roads. And this represents a bit of a shift in design user approach for a lot of previous planning activities in St. Louis County. And I think it's, that focus on inclusivity that was one of our driving values for the planning process that led us to this focus on interested but concerned and somewhat confident riders. Now, with that in mind, one of our starting points for facility selection was this facility selection matrix, which looks at different bicycle facility types that range from calm streets or bicycle boulevards up to separated bike lanes and side paths, each of which is appropriate in different context and looking at characteristics like ADT and posted speed limits, we can use those as a starting point for our discussions on facility selection and revise those over time. For our pedestrian facility recommendations, the primary focus was on addressing gaps in the sidewalk network, looking at sidewalk infill, where you might have some leapfrog sidewalk development along the corridor, and also replacing some sidewalks in poor states of repair. In total, we had about 62 miles of sidewalk projects come out of this plan. These sidewalk projects are all focused on the county road system, which is important to note. Looking at recommendations for trails and side paths, these types of facilities we learned through the planning process were most in greatest demand from county residents. I think in a lot of contexts, land use or transportation contexts, we see these as the most appropriate facility type to really support people of all ages and abilities, particularly when it comes to accessing destinations along some of our major arterials where traffic volumes and speeds may be a prohibitive factor in bicycle transportation in particular, but they also serve to create a more comfortable pedestrian experience. So on-street bikeways, our first category that you see here in this map are physically separated bike lanes, which provide a physical barrier like curbs, flex posts, planters, or even parked cars separating cycle lane from motor vehicle travel lane. This separation increases bicyclist comfort and provides a more appealing and inclusive space for people traveling by bike. We have about 75 miles of recommended separated bike lanes in this plan. For visually separated bikeways, these use striping primarily to create a dedicated space on the roadway for bicyclists. Common visually separated bikeways include conventional bike lanes, like you see pictured here. I think this is on Wydown Boulevard. That also includes buffered bike lanes and paved shoulders. These facilities provide great options for narrower roadways that can't support a physically separated bikeway. And they're also a good fit for rural roads where paved shoulders can provide additional safety benefits for motor vehicles as well. So the plan includes about 210 miles of visually separated bike lanes with conventional and buffered bike lanes comprising the majority of that figure. So the last category of on-street bikeways is our mixed traffic bikeways. On these bikeways, people biking and driving are sharing the same travel lane. These facilities are often identified by pavement markings, warning signs, or bike route signs, and are most suitable for low-speed, low-volume roads like your neighborhood streets. And while the action plan focuses primarily on regional connections, these mixed traffic bikeways can provide important connections between the regional system and local destinations. In addition to our physical infrastructure improvements, our network recommendations that we've just walked through, the plan focuses a great deal on policies and programs as well. And these policies and programs really support the network by creating a safe and welcoming environment and really help establish a long-lasting impact by changing the way that the county approaches transportation and provides them with additional guidance and resources to integrate walking and biking into program projects. On the programming end, the focus is primarily on education, encouragement, and continued engagement with the community, raising awareness for people walking and biking, and building a mutual respect among all road users. One of the important pieces of this plan, and I think it gets to the name of the plan itself, we're creating the St. Louis County Action Plan for Walking and Biking. So there's a big focus on implementation and how do we get these projects on the ground. As part of this plan, we looked at about just over 40 miles of corridors on the St. Louis County roadway system, and took a deeper dive into the recommendations that were initially proposed through a synchro analysis and the development of some intersection concepts and cross sections to really envision what these facilities might look like and are they feasible. So it's a high level study, and we acknowledge, in a planning study of this nature, varies from the level of synchro analysis or conceptual design that you would get into during project development, but it gives a good starting point and provides the county with some additional information that can help with subsequent project development and community engagement. So one of those corridors that I'll just take a couple minutes to walk through here is Sappington Road. And Sappington's in South St. Louis County, stretching from Big Bend to Lindbergh. At least the corridor that we are looking at, it continues further south. And there's existing bike lanes on the north end from Big Bend down to the Katy Trail. But there's also quite a few schools and retail centers, parks, and other destinations along the corridor. We were looking at the possibility for a road diet on Sappington from a 4 or 5 lane road down to a 3 lane. And one of the first steps in that process was to examine current conditions through a synchro model. And what we saw in our analysis was that there's already failing levels of service at some key intersections along the corridor, particularly where it crosses some state highways, including Watson, Gravois, and Lindbergh. So there were still opportunities, though, to develop a road diet with the addition of some buffered bicycle lanes for the majority of the corridor, with the opportunity to transition to either a shared use path for the southernmost segment from Gravois south to Lindbergh, or a shared use path or even a raised cycle track adjacent to the sidewalk through the Watson Road intersection, which you see in the upper right-hand corner shown in purple on the top of that map. So we developed some photo simulations to look at before and after conditions for what that proposed facility might look like, and help give people an understanding of the change that could possibly occur. Here's an example of a concept developed for that intersection at Watson. You can see at the north and south ends of this approach where the bike lanes transition to a shared use path and cross bicyclists through the intersections in that pedestrian crossing phase. So it's a challenging intersection, and we found that the continuation of that road diet through the intersection would further increase those already failing levels of service. So it was a challenge that couldn't be addressed through an on-street bikeway development, but this alternative gives another option for how we can safely cross cyclists over this busy intersection. So there are 11 other corridor studies that we developed for this plan, and each one of those studies will be useful for years to come as the county really focuses on how we can take our existing infrastructure and transform it in a way that better integrates walking and biking as key components of that multimodal system. Now I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Larry to close with some additional slides.
Thanks, Kevin. The team did a lot of work in data gathering and analysis and community engagement. But as with any plan, the real challenge is implementation. Due to the nature of the county roadway system and funding that is not sufficient to even maintain it, making the improvements needed to make walking and biking in the county a much better option will be difficult and take many years. We will have to prioritize projects based on safety, equity, demand, connectivity, access, comfort, feasibility, and other factors such as compatibility with roadway maintenance projects. It will be all hands on deck with several county departments and other agencies working together to find solutions, both financial and physical. As always, residents and stakeholders will be engaged to best meet their needs. With more than 500 million in recommended infrastructure projects and nearly 275 million for projects on county roads, funding the action plan will be a major challenge. The county is projecting to reach a $50 million annual deficit for roadway system maintenance by 2025, and closing that gap is the primary objective for the county DOT right now. However, system maintenance and active transportation projects are not mutually exclusive, and that's where an opportunity-based strategy to plan implementation comes into play. There are hundreds of miles of recommended on-street bikeways that can be installed as part of resurfacing projects. These projects will be critical to the early success of the plan until such time that additional revenue resources can be secured. We are still tweaking the document to address comments during February. And so then in March, we plan to request the county council to officially adopt the plan. So we appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn a little bit more about St. Louis County's action plan for biking and walking.